remember the first day I came in the office, and they're like, they're building this thing called Ethereum. And I'm like, what? If you cannot learn in 15 seconds anything that's relevant for you to make decisions that are accurate. A lot of people ask themselves like, okay, when did you get into crypto? As if that's like a measurement point. It really isn't. I think the question I ask people is, when did you get into the internet?
What's good, everyone? Thank you for joining us and welcome to the Web3 experience. Every week we meet with the most innovative minds across culture, business, and technology to discuss how Web3 is unlocking a new era of opportunity for entrepreneurs, businesses, and creators alike.
By speaking with the builders of tomorrow and hearing their unique perspectives on Web3 and the world at large, we aim to break down the many existing societal frameworks that blockchains aim to disrupt.
I'm your host, Mozy.
And I'm Freelance.
And welcome to the show. What's good, everyone? Welcome to the next episode of the Web3 experience. I'm here with Carolina today. I'm your host, Mozy.
I'm Freelance.
And welcome to the show.
Let's just jump in with a little background here for our listeners. As Mo and I have learned, I mean, you've been incredibly successful in building down different pathways, including crypto as well as other businesses in the past. So maybe we can break into that. I mean, I know you've been involved with juice bars. I know you've been involved with consulting in telecoms, Web3, obviously, even modeling and being on magazine covers. So, how do you find the time to breathe and how do you choose like your path, right? It sounds like you've done a lot. So
Thank you guys for having me here. It has been a lot. I feel like, now that I'm in my 30s and I look back at like my 20s, I was always like really hungry of like, and always very conscious of like time. Like for me, I always felt like time is going by, and I think like impact has always been like a driving force in everything that I've done. Starting very early, like I always grew up as an athlete, so I always had like little time to actually socialize because, I would be like recovering or studying or like doing something in school. So I felt like with crypto and NFTs, it was like this platform where I'm like, I actually want to get to know these people. Like, this is like my kind of people, right? Like we're all in to actually making a change for a system that hasn't really worked well. So it was just like the perfect combination of like art and technology coming together. I think like for me, the common denominator is always wellness. Like everything that I build and everything that I create has like a wellness background. How can we improve how people are feeling? How can we improve how people are doing? And how can I contribute in that way? So whether that is a juice bar, which was really early on when I realized how important food is for our bodies and what the impact of that is in the way that I feel and that I think, depending on what I eat, and how that would affect my performance as an athlete. That's why I remember back in the day, I wanted to make something that was sustainable, that didn't have waste. So it was really like my college project. And it was beautiful. Like I was able to connect with a lot of athletes. I had it inside of a gym. And it was like my first like business really like launching. I was like 17. So I was like so excited, but also like, it was almost like just for fun, really like, but I like got obsessed with the recipes. I'm like, okay, I need to like make like, how am I going to call them? Like, what are they going to have? Like, how do they taste good? So like I started researching, getting scientists involved. Like, I remember I worked with a chemical like engineer who's like, if you like mix mango with like strawberry, it's not the same if you mix it with orange juice. Like, and I'm like, what? So it was almost like I wanted to learn about food, and I wanted to like offer something for like my friends that were working out in this gym, for them to like have something to intake after their workouts. But it was a business for sure. Like I remember I traveled to the UK for my first offer on a global campaign, a social awareness campaign with Stella Artois and water.org. And I was building kind of the first small Trader Joe's in Costa Rica. And the way I was building it was by creating more sustainability and local products. So I wanted to create 90% of products to be local, so for them to be grown in Costa Rica. So I wanted to do, and I actually did finish like a manual just to help like, commerce buy from locals instead of just buying from like import product. And when I moved to the UK for this campaign, it was very aligned into my mission. They wanted to develop a campaign on getting water to women in countries that it's really hard to access. So I did an audition, and as a model and as an actor, I just felt like that was what I wanted to do. So I think, like, to your question, like, how do you balance, how do you make decisions on what you do? To me, it always has to come back to my values, right? So like that job as a model spoke to what I was doing. Like I could actually come in and with conviction and with research and know-how say, okay, what are we speaking about? So we did the photo shoot that moved me to the UK, and that was a big part of like a transition in my career. But it really has been not compromising my values. I think that's what is very strong for me. And those values are, really like well-being. I think it's a huge one, but then also like excellence and talent and discipline and commitment and respect, and humbleness and honesty. I think those are a big part of the way that I build and that I've built my career as well.
Awesome. Thank you. And I love the mindset, bringing everything back to kind of your purpose or your why, right? I mean, you can't just go out into the world without a goal plan. So I like how you kind of funnel things in and you compartmentalize and say, oh, this is going to be towards my purpose and I'm going to explore it. I like that.
Yeah, thank you for sharing that. And it's important that you keep always like a focus on the nitty gritty and the details. Like even at the juice bar, the ingredients, you really wanted to push yourself to learn more about making them better, making sure the names are perfect. And like this all translates to just business building. And as you transition into digital business building through NFTs and PFPs, like those little details are what separate projects from others. Like the details you put in your smart contract, the details in the art, like all those little things that separate you from the rest. So yeah, thank you for sharing that. You mentioned you were an athlete, and we can all kind of resonate with that. So like transitioning into more digital and transitioning into like technology, more Web3 culture, being immersed, what holistic approaches do you take to like balance that digital physical life now?
Yeah, thank you. That's such a good question, Mozy, because I think that the mindset, like you said, it's super important, right? And I tend to be very perfectionist when I'm building. And I feel like a lot of us are, right? Because
that resonates with me.
We're like getting our art there for the first time. Yeah. So OCD. Yeah. But that's the magic. Yeah. I mean, and this is what really is so cool. Like, I feel like where we think like our problem is or our challenge is, that's where our magic really is. And learning how to balance that and learning how to go through that door, that really is what like sets us apart into like being relentless and unstoppable in our pursuits, right? Mm-hmm. So I think like definitely it has like a flip side where if you are too OCD and you're overthinking a lot, and like I do that, and I that's where I'm like, okay, I have that inner conversation and that inner dialogue with myself, mm-hmm. where I'm always assessing. Right? Like, let's do an assessment. So like athletes, we do an assessment, right? And we go to the, to the wherever we're training and we assess like, okay, let's see how like our joints are doing. Let's see how our legs are doing. Let's see how our shoulders like, and we do those like workouts just to see how we're doing. We're observant. So we learn how to observe our body, right? Yeah. By doing this testing. I'm constantly doing that with myself and my mindset and my balance, right? And I feel like we have that like mindset, and I think like as a culture, Web3 needs to create from that place where it's when we are observant, because otherwise it's just ups and downs, right? And you can see it in the market, you can see it in trends, like you can see how, yes, you can put so much to build something perhaps with foundations that are lacking that like stability, and then it's going to fall because it can't sustain itself, mm-hmm. And so like it is really a mirror of like our own self-awareness and our own self like discipline. So I think for me, there are non-negotiables that I have, certainly. And one non-negotiable is my sleep. And when I go against it, I see myself changing. So like because I'm the only one that has control over that, right? Mm-hmm. So if I do, which I've done it a ton of times, say that I go to sleep at 4, in the morning after like Elon Musk joined decides to join a Twitter space at 2:30 in the morning, I'm clearly not going to bed. Like, this is the first time this man is there. I'm like, what's up? And he's like actually giving a lot of info. So I'm like awake 2:30, 3, 4 in the morning. 4 in the morning, I can't go to sleep because I can't talk about this with anyone. And I'm just there on the phone. So I'm like, okay, so try to sleep until 11. So just like extending my time of sleep. And some people can do it because some people actually need to wake up and do other duties. Yeah. So this is where it becomes a little bit complicated because really Web3 has no schedule yet. But then I put boundaries, right? I'm like, okay, I sleep until 11, then like on a Sunday, go get sun and do not think about anything and just get vitamin D and do stretching and just get in the zone. And that's what we know, like the zone, right? And that zone is incredible. Like when I get in the zone where I'm like, connected to my body, receiving the vitamin B, eating well, not thinking or making any decisions. I give myself that permission. You're not making decisions right now. That's fine. You don't need to make any decisions, right? Because that's where it becomes a little bit addictive, where you're like, no, what if I do that? Or if I like the roadmap, right? We're all trying to figure out what's the roadmap, what's our next step. A lot of these things we don't know, and that's okay. It's healthy to allow the serendipitous moments where things just happen, like when we're not thinking about it, when we're taking the shower, or when we're out for a walk, after we spoke with our mother, right? Like, I think nurturing those magical moments in between is what gives me passion to like feel like some of these decisions are not coming from me, are just like coming from like a higher consciousness. And I truly believe like we are connected like that, and that we can get downloads and messages if we give ourselves. In my case, meditation helps a lot, yoga, walking, and any type of workout, that gets my body moving, and that makes me feel good and connect.
Yeah, I mean, the struggle is just clearing your mind, right? With endless information coming in, like you said, on a global basis. Like, there's this mass sense of FOMO just from you maybe missing out on certain intel that went down in a spaces at like 2 p.m. or at like 2 a.m. It's like, because small things in this decentralized market can move markets. And like, especially for these last couple of weeks, which we're going to get into, it's like if people weren't at their computer, didn't know these things were going down, if they took a day to decompress and really forget about all this, you miss so much and potentially a lot of money online. So it's like being able to convince yourself that it's okay. Like you just have to accept what you can't control and what's out of your control, accept what you can accept, and just kind of don't. Like, I find myself in the gym sometimes, and then I'll get like a notification for somebody that I have alerts on, and then I'll see it, and then it's a huge thread for this new something that came out that's important that I have to read.
My phone's in a locker during the gym.
See, I gotta do that.
The gym is my sanctuary. Yeah. If my phone is giving me then my sanctuary's gone. So I cannot even.
I know, man. And I'm usually good with it, but sometimes I'll just get lost in a thread, and like 20 minutes will go by, and I'm like, okay, now I'm cold. And I'm not less motivated than I was when I just got off the bike and I was warm and my heart rate was up. So it's like, finding that balance and just like going to touch grass and leaving your phone away from you.
And you can, it's so cool to make the test. Like, you can test yourself, because you can't, like, I've learned, like, I cannot like convince anyone to take care of themselves. I just cannot. Yeah. That's not my responsibility. I'm my only responsibility. And I can lead by example, but I cannot convince anyone. I think that just people need to really find that within themselves. Yeah. Like, where they're like, okay, this is the time. I need to quit cigarettes. Okay, this is the time I'm going to actually go for a jog. Or this is the time I'm going to go for therapy. It needs to come from within. Yeah. But I really do think, like, finding a sacred space, like what you just described as, like, that's my sanctuary, right? What is that for people? And again, it's like about the small steps. And I think, like, that's also reflects in building, right? A lot of people, I mean, they want to flip, they want to just make a ton of money and then we made it. And I think, like, that mentality, to me, because I know, like, that a muscle is not going to just, like, develop itself, like, tomorrow. Like, I know that, like, my core is not going to have the strength that I need in one day. Like, I've known that it has taken me 10 years of working out and going to the gym for me to have my balance, my posture, my breathing, for me to know meditation. Like, it's taken me maybe 15 years, really, more than 10. It's been 15 years where now I'm like, okay. And the same applies with technology. Like, I think, like, a lot of people ask themselves, like, okay, when did you get into crypto? As if that's like a measurement point. It really isn't. I think the question I ask people is, when did you get into the internet? and how was your experience? You know, like my first email was Hotmail. I was like 12 years old in a big computer, and I was like, what? Email? Like, it was changed my mind, like completely my possibilities, right? And like also music, like being able to listen to music through the internet back in the day. And that's really Web 0. Like when we look at Web 3, right, a lot of speculation of how it's correlated with crypto. The only reason it's really cryptography as a technology, right? And then what we are able to do in terms of accessing the web through our credentials, our ownership. And that's why to me NFTs are incredible, because having digital ownership for the first time in history, right, as an artist, and as a human being, I mean, just like think of it like humans, aliens looking at us from above, and like, how are they managing themselves? What are they doing? You know, like it's quite messy if we get out of ourselves far enough to see how we manage. So,
yeah, definitely. Perspective is always key, right?
Yes.
So I think it's interesting too. You guys both kind of brought up control, right? And yeah, I mean, it's learning, like you said, on a Sunday to let go of control, not be making decisions, not be stressing yourself out, or controlling what you can and not controlling. I mean, even from an example of quitting cigarettes, you know, most people are more worried about trying to keep up with all this information that's out in the world so they can have some semblance of what they think is control on the industry or what's going on in the market. And they're like, oh, I can't quit smoking. It's like, you're trying so hard to control something you have no control over, and you're not even trying to control yourself or your brain or your subconscious, which you can alter and work on. So I think that's an interesting thing to keep in mind. It's just, what can we actually control, and what do we need to keep up with? And I love the focus on ourselves.
So true. And, you know, that's where resistance comes up. And that's where a lot of trolling happens as well. And I see it. We see a lot of trolling, a lot of people feeling empowered to be mean and to be disrespectful behind the screen. And I think that's just a reflection of what they have to go back into themselves. Right? Like, and it truly is. I mean, not that I think that the utopia concept of all being fluently, you know, kind and beautiful will be an actual reflection, because really the internet is only a mirror of our society, right? That's what Vinton Cerf says, which is the co-founder of the IP protocol. Like, the internet is only a mirror of society. So it will show us all of those things. But I think like the moment we see them, to me, like what I think is like, okay, this is a sample of our society. What can we do? What can we control? And fair enough, that's incredible. Like that example is actually super accurate to many of us. To me, like I always see it like that self-responsibility. What am I responsible of myself that can make me better and make better decisions when I need to make those decisions, right?
Sure. Yeah.
So,
You said earlier how the Web3 industry, something you had a very like a feel for like-minded people in the space, and you could resonate well with people. And it brings me back to this quote that I've seen. It's like 85% of the globe are followers, 10% of the globe are leaders, and 5% are observers. And the followers follow the leaders, and the observers kind of sit on the sidelines and see how things play out. They usually have like an approach that's not with either side, that sees the world for how it is. And I feel like a lot of those people who are in the 5%, and like you were saying, music, I think a lot of us probably used LimeWire and like those decentralized applications kind of before they were decentralized, underground.
Peer sharing,
those types of things. And I feel like a lot of those people trickled into this industry because they were observing and saw how Bitcoin came up, and like then kind of dug deep and started observing more. And then it ties into the balance thing, because we're observers at heart, but we kind of observe too much sometimes. So it's like, I always got to see what's going on, but then you're just not observing yourself. Like he's saying, like there's that control of what you can control and control of what you can, like yourself. So you just got to control that and then see the world play out and just kind of position yourself accordingly. If we're in this industry now, you kind of, you've observed well and you see what's coming, in my opinion. So you've done well. Now you just got to make sure that you don't lose yourself in the process, right? Yeah.
Do you, well, let's kind of take it from that point. I think a lot of people, especially the past 2 weeks with what's gone on with FTX and Binance and Alameda and BlockFi and all these exchanges and things, just have you yourself like taken the time to kind of slow down and like, has it been affecting you? Or if not, I mean, what would you say to other people that, you know, probably are being affected and maybe they're feeling a little zany these days, a little bit beat down or drained or whatnot? What advice would you give to people especially in an industry like this? Is layoffs, prices are tumbling, like, just to keep your head on straight and be able to just move through it and keep building.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think it affects us all. Like, this is a hit for everyone in crypto because it really is what the awareness of crypto means for people that might not know much of crypto, right? So it will be a story that associates with loss and fraud, and once everything is confirmed, however it ends up being confirmed, with the extent of actors involved, it will be a lesson as well and a purge in our industry. And I think we are in a process now naturally where this needs to happen, where the actual actors that are not in alignment with how to do things will naturally show themselves and leave, because the technology does that exactly. Like, this is why, like, if we look at like the financial crisis back in 2009 and like what you can prove and what you cannot prove, and we look at a crisis that is in crypto, you prove it, because that's what crypto does. It keeps track of what happens. So this is really, to me, just a case study of how successful this technology is.
Yeah, I mean, people are watching. Was it KuCoin? Was it one of these exchanges? We should fact check, but one of these exchanges that they had their proof of reserve snapshot, and then like an hour later they sent $800 million worth of Ethereum to another exchange by accident, which then somewhere along the line they had their proof of reserves done, and then they sent the money back, and it's like, it's not confirmed, but it's just like, who knows what kind of things are, maybe they're all, we don't all want to blow up, so we'll all work together and maybe just play the shell game, bouncing something back and forth. And you can see it. Yeah. So you see these transactions happening on the chain and you're like, what's going on? We got to, So I think, and there are technologies out there, proof of reserve by Chainlink, Binance has a solution. So it is interesting that these technologies and solutions are out there, but they're not widely adopted yet. But like you said, this is a great purge moment that maybe brings in the adoption of these features that blockchain really enables. Like, that was the point of it.
I mean,
in the first place.
It takes time, right? Like with the .com, like we saw it, right? And this is what I think like our generation has seen. And this is my advice to the newer generations, just to really educate themselves. I think like before making a decision, one, not to buy the hype. Like, the hype comes from emotions, right? So there's anger, there's happiness, there's excitement. Calm down. Before making a decision, the best way to make a decision is extremely calm. Like, that's how athletes do it. That's how they make the big shots. That's how they win games, right? That's like, and I love like Tim Grover. He's one of my mindset coaches.
He wrote that book.
Relentless.
He's
so good. He speaks about like the closers, and then he speaks about, the actual, I think it's closers. And then he has like other two elements of how like a team would be composed. And it's really coming from a place of calmness. So if you're not calm, if you're not sure about a decision, just don't do it. Like, it's fine. Miss out. Like, it's okay. Like, and I think that's what we need to move from the FOMO to like actually concrete decision making, which is like a good investment. So like, I think of it in like, ask like 3 questions. First, like, how long is this investment going to be? Right? And what am I serving? Like, why am I buying this? And I think this ties it up with conscious consumption. Like, I really like to think of us like as a species that can be more conscious of what we're buying and why we're buying the things we're buying. What are you satisfying, right? Why do you need this? Is it for, because you want to be a part of a community? Okay. Does it speak your language? Are you looking at the links? Just please verify the links, right? I think this is like, like, we cannot say this one enough.
Like, even with Twitter Blue, like Twitter Blue came out and they just redacted it because people were getting fooled by posers. But dude, if you just look at the ad, if the ad, I mean, okay, they changed the name, they have a check mark, but just do one more thing, one more step. Look at the ad. If there's an underscore or a weird
Mozy, but you know what I think this comes from, and I'm actually,
experience.
And I also think it's I think it's definitely experience, and we're in the good side of the force here. But I really think it has to do with how the brain is developing in this new generation.
Yes.
I generally think that
sure.
social media is changing the brain of these kids, where they don't have that, like they're not learning the same way.
Yeah.
So it's something to and look at it. Like, what's the demand in social media? TikTok.
Dancing.
What do we see? And that's dance. I love dancing. Like,
I know.
like
but
dancing is amazing,
but-
but if you cannot learn in 15 seconds anything that's relevant for you to make decisions that are accurate, and that you can feel that will have, a responsible cause and effect.
Yeah.
So I think that's like, I think in the moment that these kids are making those decisions, they don't have the patience to read or to pay attention.
Yeah.
So they're like, and I will tell, like, and again, it's not, I think like it's a natural progression. It's no one's fault. So I don't want to like just be like saying like they're not doing this, but it's not happening in a big part of the population, and not just kids. I think everybody. So I think like as a species, we're seeing that we're losing our motor skills to focus, right? We really are not very good to focus. We just want to swipe and see the next thing. And
follow what the algorithm shows.
Exactly.
Yeah.
We went from like reading books and articles and documentaries to like shorter and shorter films to TV series to just like 6-second clips, because our attention span is just becoming smaller and smaller and smaller. We want more content in shorter spans. Like, give me this. I want, same thing. But the algorithms, you show it a little bit of what you like and it floods you with that similar stuff. So people get lost in these algorithms, and like you're saying, it's making a lot of our society, kind of suspect for the next.
Did you see what Sam Bankman-Fried said about books?
No, what he said.
I mean, I think this is a good example. Not because I want to lambast him, or obviously it's relevant right now, but and he was successful for a little bit. Who knows how much was fraudulent? But he said about books, he's like, I don't really trust them. I think if you're an author, you made a mistake. You probably could have just written a 6-paragraph blog post. Right? And it's like, well, when you take shortcuts, now you see what happens.
Yeah.
Right?
That's a shortcut. That's exactly it.
Yeah.
That truly is it. I think I come from Costa Rica. Like, I was born and raised in Costa Rica, and I've like my great grandmother, she's 94, and then my great grandmother lived until she was 104.
Wow.
Yeah, and I've seen how that works, and I think like it really is. And again, this might not be the goal for everybody. A lot of people is just like, I'm not here for a long time, just for a short time. I totally respect that, but I feel very responsible, not just for my generation, but for the other ones, right? And for a species, like I feel very connected with my humanity, and that makes me really think of longevity, not just as something for myself, but something beyond myself, right? Like, I do feel like there will be consciousness where I'm gone, and that I will somehow, don't know where or why, be connected to what I build in this planet. So I feel like that makes me really like connect to, okay, then how can we make this something that lasts, right? Whether that is a community, a technology, because otherwise we're coming back to try to fix things that we did wrong.
Yep.
And then it's like a hamster wheel where we're just trying to like reduce so much. So there's not a lot of efficiency in our systems if we build like that. And there's a lot of waste, and our planet feels it. Our planet's like, yo, you guys are wasting a lot here. And so it's like we are being told in so many ways about this, right? There's so many crises, mental health crisis, depression, anxiety. And all of this is a byproduct of really not having that moment of like, we're just like talking about it earlier, having that self-awareness and those moments, and that can be taught. So that's the good thing. This can be taught. Like people can be trained. So it's incredible. Like, yes, like, maybe instead of going to like, I don't know, maybe instead of whatever you're going to get for entertaining, get a webinar, pay that webinar. That might take you further. Like, read that book, because not everybody likes to read, right? A lot of people are like, I don't have it. It doesn't work. And it's fine. It's fine. Go draw or like communicate in a way that it works. Like for me, like I read all my life. That's why I wear glasses. Like since I was very young, I was super shy. So I would just go back into books. But this might not be the tool for other people. So to me, it's just like my advice will be find what makes you connect to your higher self.
Yeah.
Find what makes you connect with a purpose that's higher than yourself, that transcends your ego.
Yeah.
Because then that way you really are hacking through your mind and your body, and you're going into that place that I love to call spirit, whatever that is. It's that thing that you cannot control, that you cannot explain. That's just like, oh my God, that was like magical. Like, I don't know how that happened. Those moments that we're just like I could never plan that. Those people that we meet that we're just like we think of it like just sent from above, things like this.
Yeah.
I like nurturing that and I feel like we need a lot of that as a species to build better.
I saw there was something that said like rules and principles are a lot more digestible and easy to understand when they're taught through stories, because stories allow you to see the rule acted out and learn from and see how to apply the rule and see what to learn from the rule. But like you're saying, reading and people getting engulfed in these large stories, whether it be whatever length, just shifting towards this short-term mentality, it's kind of taking us away from the principles and learning through the experience of others, because people are just in it for the short-term content, in it for the short dopamine hits rather than like insightful stuff. Because like China gave us TikTok, and it's a totally different app in China. It's more educational there, it's more centered around intellectuals, and here it's more centered around stuff that keeps you engaged. It's not stuff that keeps you like learning more, stuff that keeps you yearning for more content and more of that same dopamine feeling. So the algorithm just keeps hitting you with it. And once we shift towards like a more, I don't know, it's just the next generation, man. I just don't want my kid growing up on TikToks doing all that much. I just want them to understand that self-awareness. And that brings me back to what you said earlier about what's going on in the markets. Like, you have to be self-aware and notice that crypto is not what's failing right now. It's the people leading crypto. And like, we're still in that Web 2.5 to Web 3.0 era, right? So like, it's the humans that are interfering with the technology. The technology,
the code works.
The technology, the code, the auditing, the smart contracts, and being able to look back and see what's going on. The technology is what allowed us to catch these people. But like, I'm glad, like you said before, that we were able to get the bad actors out and into the light right now, because honestly, and brings me to my next question, what's going on with FTX and the conspiracy theories and their major ties to like the Democratic Party and being the number 2 donor to the Biden campaign. It's like, there's a lot of fishy things that are in that story. And I saw that you had, background working for a guidance and overview society that helped, regulate on a global level. What insight do you think the FTX collapse and all the conspiracies around that, how do you think that's going to shape policymakers moving forward? And like, do you think this was planned on their end, or like, how do you see this affecting the industry long term?
Yeah, Mozy, it's such a good question. It really is a great question, because to me, growing up, I was exposed very personally to corruption in my upbringing. And it was a very specific upbringing. I don't talk about it at all. Never in my life said it out loud. But people who know me, my friends, my family, people in Costa Rica know, because it's such a small country. And so growing up like that, with such a real life experience of how politics operate, how interests operate, gave me a big purpose of, wow, you need to do better than this, right? Mm-hmm. And I think that it's hard to say because we're early, but I do think that corruption is in almost every case like this. Mm-hmm. It just has all of the components to it. And corruption is when there are political parties involved, when there's a private sector involved as well, and when there are a conflict of interests, right? So the government should be the mirror of decentralization. Like, if anything, that is why Ethereum blockchain started to begin with. Like, the intention of it was to look into open governance back when Obama was in the government, and it did not really go through. So like, right in that moment, I was in 2015, I was in the Internet Society. I started being a fellow before 2013. 2012. I got to be a fellow of the Internet Society because I just wanted to understand who controls the internet. Like, who can turn this off? Like, it's so powerful. Like, we can speak through the internet. We can find information about each other if we look hard enough, because everything's recorded through the internet. And it really was from there till like 2015, 2016, when I was in New York, in the Internet Society of New York, the chapter, as their vice president. I was going to the office, seeing how all this amazing people were just behind the computer, like going crazy at crazy hours too, because it was 24/7, building this, and I wasn't sure what. I remember the first day I came in the office, and I was just like, let's see what the Internet Society is like in New York. And the president brought me in, and I was like, so dope. I was like, everyone was just in their computers, but it was like a level of passion that you cannot be paid for. You know, people don't pay you to do this. Like, this is not like what I've seen before. And they're just like there, and I'm like, what are they doing so much? And they're like, they're building this thing called Ethereum, and I'm like, what? I'm like, can you like guide me through it? Like, I've read, because it's so like the way we read these things, like their emails, they're not cute. Like I get all these emails, and like I get like all these responses, and they're just like, they're like all this like text. Like, it looks like 1960, and so that's the way a lot of these organizations communicate, but because they're coders.
Yeah.
Right. So for me, I was just like, yeah, I read about Ethereum, but can you just like walk me through what's going on? He's like, well, this is going to change the world. This is going to change the world. And I saw the passion in everybody. I was like, this is going to change the world. And so it was really like a before and after for me when I really saw these people doing it just for the network of networks to expand, because that's how we saw it, right? How can we have the network of networks go through? That's like the initial mantra of really like decentralization, because that's what the internet is. The internet is % decentralized, right? So, and there's many cases, if we look back then, that we can think of that have been in the works that I could use as an example to your question. There's huge telecom cases. Like, I remember 2009, there was a case with Google and Orange that was huge about, you know, like the cable companies wanted to have a piece of the actual profit of the layers on top, like Google. Google is just a layer on top of the cable companies. So, and we've seen those in court. You know, we've seen Facebook in court. We've seen every time there's an edge, a break in technology, there's going to be a resistance, right? Where we're going to be like, they're going to be pulling and pushing because the power dynamics change, because the wealth distribution changes. So it's naturally going to take us to this process, just like, you know, all other, these communities are also being, you know, scrutinized and a lot is because there's a lack of understanding of how the technology is. So there's a big part of it that needs to be educated. So we can sit down, multidisciplinary teams, people that know different things. So they cannot all be the same. Like, they cannot all be politicians. No, we all need each other. We all need like different pieces of us. So we can, hey, this is what's going on. This is what we're doing, right? And then we can take it from there and make it more accessible and, you know, bring it in a plane that is, I wouldn't like to say regulated, because I understand how important regulation is, but I also feel like something that is not well understood shouldn't be regulated. It's just because that could potentially...
You don't want to stifle it.
Yeah.
It just cuts innovation, like right there. Like protocols, for example, like China and Bolivia, right? Those are two of the only countries in the world that have the voice over IP protocol constructed. Like, you cannot get voice internet through the internet. And so it creates like a local ecosystem, right? It's like, it bubbles in, it insulates instead of, so that's the only way you cut a network of networks, right? Net neutrality, it's another very important issue, right? Like, and these things we're not talking about. So I think like when it comes to cases like this, which are so hard to predict, but at the same time, I think it's just really, I definitely think it will come into a big lesson for us. I do think there is corruption, but it's up to the authorities and to people that, like, either data journalists, like actual data journalists, people, and that's another gap that we're missing.
Yeah.
A lot of these journalists, they don't understand the Etherscan.
Yeah.
They don't understand the blockchain.
For sure.
They don't know how to like data mine this addresses. So we need those tools. And I think there are a lot. Like, I mean, I'd be lying if there isn't. I'm sure there's like a lot of foundations and organizations that are actively pursuing this. But we just need them to be more aggressive, right?
Yeah.
And make it available for us to prevent.
Yeah, I mean, there just
future.
needs to be, like, the blockchain allows for this next layer of transparency, right? And you have to be able to read the protocol and understand how it's working. Have more people like Zach, XBT, and like more auditors who operate on like a more personal basis and who we can look to on Twitter and see if something is safe or not, and kind of look to them. Like, without some people on Twitter, there's so many rug pullers and so many bad actors that would have gotten away with so much this past year and a half, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like, without people calling them out, and there's such a select few of people who are able to understand the chains and be able to put up, digestible content to be able to give to regulators and say, hey, this person is acting illegally, you guys should do something. Because they are sucking liquidity out of the market that should be there for good actors and be, giving to people who are providing value. So like, this brings us to our next stepping point in Web3. I feel like over the past 2 years, we've seen so much. We've seen anonymous projects sell to actually, maybe we should know who you are. So like, maybe you should dox to like, actually, maybe we should know where your money's going. Like, tell us where the treasury's going and break it down in percentages. Okay, actually, we still don't know if that's actually going there. So now we need this new proof of reserve, or like, we need to see the wallet. We need to see where the money's going and being transferred, and see if you guys are sticking to your word, because at the core of decentralization, the blockchain tracks you and audits you without anybody's approval. Like, if you're sticking to your word and the treasury and money is going to where it's supposed to be and being directed to where it's supposed to go, then everybody will see it. If you're not, then everybody will see it. You know what I mean?
Oh, it's ironic too, because when I got into crypto, it was really a very hard mentality of everyone that I was learning from, like, verify, don't trust, right? Like, that was like the Bitcoin OG, like one of their sayings. And with this technology, you're allowed to do that. And then somehow over the past few years, it flipped, and it's like, oh, now we're trusting these central figures, these celebrated people, celebrities in the crypto space. SBF, before this whole blow up, was a celebrity in the crypto space, right? Like,
being promoted by
these people get to a certain level, and then they're on a platform and they're on a pedestal, and we're all like, oh yeah, that makes sense what he says, but nobody's actually going and checking, right? And I think this was a great moment for crypto to go through, to be able to realize, like, wait, why did we get here in the first place?
Yeah.
Oh, right, transparency, trust, right? Minimizing these dependencies on third parties to just tell you what it is. You can actually see it yourself.
Yeah.
So yeah, definitely an interesting time.
And it's succumbing to the hype too. Like, they're seeing Kevin O'Leary and Tom Brady and FTX Arena, and they're seeing all of these good signs saying that FTX is solid and that FTX is the decentralized, exchange to go to. But at the core, FTX was not decentralized at all. Didn't even have a board of trustees, or like, they didn't even have anybody to kind of harness in any bad actors or any like malicious attempts to take down the protocol. It's bailing out those celebrities that, and maybe even the political parties involved that bet on them and said, hey, we're putting our money in you, you put your money in me, and we trust you. Now that they collapse, we're like, we're gonna need something back. So like, okay, we have one more play. Let's just hack the exchange and take the money that's left. We've already lost 9 bill. It's like, what's 300 more million, or 400 million? It's like, it's crazy. Yeah, we're gonna see a lot more transparency coming up.
It has to. I think people are definitely building their, like you just said, trust, but verify 100%. Always do your research, like, and it's like, oh, this person gave me a tip, or this person gave me that. Like, that doesn't matter. Like, it doesn't matter who anybody is, right? I think, to me, data talks, facts talk. Like, that's the way I make decisions. I need to study the data. I need to see where it comes from. I need to see behavior. I need to see statistics. Like, I study economy for a reason. Like, I'm not playing. So I think people need to think like that. yes, be an artist and love the art and express yourself, but there's a business behind it, right? That's why royalties are so important. That's what royalties are behind NFTs. And like, that's a non-negotiable. Talk about a crazy week. Like, even like playing around the concept of royalties, to me, it's like burn. Like that is a non-negotiable, 100% in our space. Like that's what inspires and gives these artists, like it gives us the chance to actually differentiate from all these industries that it's very, very predatory, right? So like, I really think that it's about that ownership and about making our research, giving our research, really understanding what we're doing, seeing the data, seeing the terms and conditions, reading the small print, like JC said, read the small print, like you gotta do that. Legal is real.
The last guest we had on, we talked about, he's an artist, and he talked about the gap between artists and creators and knowing how to operate businesses. So he went and studied business and learned how to, build a business and how to operate it, and then went into the culture world. A lot of people do that the opposite. They're in the culture world, but they don't know how to operate a business. So now this technology, and if you're in the culture world and you're not in the technological culture world, you're a basic artist,
Well, and you get wrapped up in the community, which is
exactly
great, and it can be supportive, but you forget that there is a business component. People are selling things. There's a profit component. And, you get caught up in GM. We're all gonna make it, and then all of a sudden, your portfolio was worth $250,000, and now it's worth $10,000, and you feel bad. And it's like, damn, I was like enthralled by this community, but I forgot that there's other stuff going around too.
You know what I think my best advice would be in that? It would be like really for people to think of like why things are being created, right? So if we're talking about like a coin, right, that a lot of people are like, oh, where should I put my money? Should I put it in this coin or in that coin? I think it should be, I think that's where it should come. Like just kind of like knowing why are things being built? Why are this coin? What is this? Is this supposed to be a protocol? Like just to think of it like a scientist. That's really it. Like just think of it as a scientist. Ask yourself what is the purpose of this coin? What is the purpose of this? Like with Ethereum, we know it. It's not just a coin, it's actually a blockchain, right? It's like a platform where we can build protocols and we can build the future of the internet, and it has been proven that works. With Bitcoin, it's the first one, right? So those are like the father and the mother, like we know it, Bitcoin and Ethereum, like they're not gonna go anywhere. It's just how history is. And then when it comes to all these other coins, where are they coming from? Are they coming from Ethereum? And like, go to the website, go to ethereum.org. I believe that's probably the website. If not, go to the website of Ethereum. And like, it's now they made it super beautiful to like transition through it. So I think curiosity is what I would tell people. Get curious, right? About the technology, about where this is going, about why people create things, how it connects to our systems, how it connects to our political system, to our entire ecosystem, right? Everything is interconnected. So I think curiosity is probably one good place to start.
Definitely. That's why we're creating this, is to help, because we were curious, right? And then we learned, and now we want to help more people who are curious. Try to expand that 5%, of people who think outside the box. Open your mind a little bit.
95% is
95% of the globe
crypto
followers, and 95% of crypto is male.
It's very real.
I really liked the way that you compared building a community to like a scientist creating something, because when a scientist creates something, they're passionate about finding the answer, right? They have a hypothesis and they have an experiment to find out if their hypothesis is correct. And then when you think about pricing, like you mentioned earlier, like a lot of times pricing and putting value and money behind creative works and stuff like that kind of distracts you from the experiment and from building something meaningful. So it's like being able, I think for the future, it's being able to like separate the floor price. Don't even worry about the floor price. Worry about what utility you're bringing to the project. What's the meaning behind it? Why would somebody purchase this over another one? Why should they follow you over another team? Like find what separates you in a wholesome way that benefits the industry's growth, because you can't jump into an industry, not knowing or feeling obliged to contribute to its growth. Because a lot of people in the past year we saw came in extracting liquidity, came in with the wrong intentions, just for the quick profits. A lot of brands too, who just jumped in without doing due diligence. A lot of them fell on their ass. Like seriously. And
it shows. That's why this space is amazing.
Yeah.
Because it's like you can't really hide.
You can't bullshit.
It's like you cannot.
Bullshit.
You can't like pretend that you know and then try to do something because it will show. And even if something doesn't work 100%, right? Because of whatever conditions, like the how you started, like that will be tracked. The community will know, everybody. So like I feel like that's the beauty of this. Like you can create one community that leads you to another community, and you can do those transitions. And I see a lot of that. But it's about coming in with also the expertise that you come with Web2. Like, what do you come with Web2? Like, what is it? Yeah. What's your passion? Like, what do you love? I think those questions, like I was asked very early on when I was a child, like it was almost like, what's your passion? What do you love? What can you wake up every morning doing? And you would do it again and again, even if you were not getting paid.
Yep.
Like, you know, you will stay there. Right. And then that's where you're just like, that fire just takes over and you just want to contribute and you find your tribe. And I'm like super passionate about kids. Like so passionate. That's like a big for me, like just to see, because we see how generations have shortened, right? Yeah. So like before it would take like a kind of a while to jump into new generations. But now with the internet, we have the native digitals, right? Which they come with the internet already embedded. So they're like quick decision makers. But also like what we were speaking about losing, I think like that's where, if we could see ourselves responsible for that, right? Like what are we leaving our next, like our generation that's come in? Mm-hmm. And what can we learn from our like older generation? Like we have so much to learn from our elders. Absolutely. Like that's another thing that it's very cultural in many places, but they've lived so much, right? So like just listening, mindful listening. And I think like that really is about humbleness as well. Like, we could be very empowered by all of these means. And I understand that labor it's changing now, right? We don't want to work in ways that we used to work before because of many things going wrong. Yeah. But I do think like we need to find a way to work together, like multi-generational. Yeah. And I think education, what you guys are doing is incredible because it truly is like allowing the voices to come out. I mean, for me as like a woman and Latina mixed, because I'm super mixed, but I think it's beautiful to be able to like be welcomed, you know, by a community like you guys. Like I have so much respect and admiration for what you guys do. Like truly, because it's like it shows, like it's like, you know, you're showing, it's like everything that I've spoken, like it's like manifested right in what you guys are doing. So
I guess what we're trying to do is just bridge generations, right? Because the generation before us, like my dad and even my uncle, like they grew up without technology. Like I feel like my generation is the last generation that grew up with and without tech. Like I didn't have a lot of technology as a kid, but we were getting like the first remnants of technology. Yeah. Now kids today are growing up with full-fledged TikTok. Like my mom's friend's daughter is 5 years old and she was doing TikTok dances and like stuff that I would never want my kid doing at that age, let alone scrolling. Like in a
burger shop. It was a family, probably two families. The parents are all talking together, whatever. They got all the kids around the table. It's like between 7 kids, there were like 6 iPads, 4 iPhones, like, and they're all like this the entire time on a screen. And it's like,
they're missing out. Like I think like it's so fun to be in the soil, in the dirt, and I mean, I know people. There's living conditions where you don't have access to nature, you know. But this is why I think building is much more than what we're building. What is our government building? Are they building parks? Like what's access to education? All these questions, right? I ask myself that question because I have that like I'm the brand ambassador of the government of Costa Rica. So like one of the things that I really like support is how can a government like think of its citizens in terms of active participants? And that's what decentralization and the blockchain allows us to be, active participants, right? And so I think this should be the motivation where we can actively vote or participate for decisions that makes us better and that contributes our well-being. Like if everybody's doing better, like everybody's doing better in a chain reaction, like it affects everybody else. So like for a kid to be playing with 6 screens, like that should be okay. Do we manage that time? But how much of that is this kid getting of nature as well? Because then all these motor skills get lost, like our instinct, our intuition, our all these things that make us human, you know. And we want to keep like our humanity as we transition to all these changes, right? Artificial intelligence, like it's like the conversation, right? The VCs are all putting their money there because of what's going to happen. How are we going to communicate? And I think like if we can preserve our humanity, our sense of senses, right? Our touch, like we're alive, we smell, we hear, we taste. We need to practice our senses.
Yeah.
And we cannot just transfer our senses to a machine and pretend to live it through the metaverse. Like,
no.
That's fine if it has a purpose. Okay, are we going to be there learning? Are we going to be, what are we going to be there doing?
Yeah.
Are we going to be there just calming ourselves, or are we going to use it for health, for education? Like, how are we going to use it?
Yeah.
I think to me is what this, like, I'm not a mother yet, but like, I think as a mother, that's what I would be asking myself.
Yeah.
If I had a family.
Yeah, it's like when you think about the future metaverse, it's what do you want it to look like? What do you don't want it to look like? I would rather it be used for, education, because obviously going to school and we're able to interact. There's a social IQ that you get from interacting with people physically, and I think that can't be replicated virtually, like through lenses and stuff like that. But as more homeschooling becomes the norm, which I think it will in the next 10, 15 years, I think the virtual settings and being able to be in classrooms and teachers being able to write on boards and those types of things are going to be more useful. But when I'm scared about the big brands coming in and trying to create activations that just steal people away from the reality and make it too real and too dopamine filled to where people just kind of get consumed by that and stop.
The metaverse becomes Times Square, just everywhere, billboards and signs and flashing lights and.
Yeah, I mean, I think we are all there. Like, it's a major concern, and it's great that it's a concern, right? Because we see the power of Web3, and I love that. Yeah. Like, we can see. Like, it just happened this week, right? OpenSea comes out, says that they're going to edit their royalties. The community roars, starts speaking out, and they retract. So, like, okay, so are we keeping the pulse on the decisions that are really relevant? And I think if as a community we can have that say-in, then we are being active participants in like major decisions. Yeah. So I feel like if we can just translate that towards how we keep building, like, we should keep safe, but that's where we need to keep strong. Like, especially the early players, the OGs, people that have incredible stories, right? That it's just like, like, this changed my life. How many of those? I hear so many of those. And I think like that's why it's important to keep ourselves healthy, to keep ourselves in a good space so that we can continue to be relevant in our decision making versus like a corporation or anyone else that could take a lot of power. But it does take time. And I think like we will still see ups and downs. It's just natural. So it's just natural. Like, and I was just thinking about this the other day, like, yeah, we cannot stop the waves. Like, they're going to keep happening. It's how nature is, but we can learn how to surf, right? Yeah. We can see how to get in that wave, how to make it flow, how to make it feel good. So,
I liked how you mentioned, confiding in your community. It makes me think of all the rug pulls in the past, like the projects where the founders have abandoned them, but the community like will take it over. And how many projects? There's so many projects where the founders have completely abandoned it, but somebody in the community steps up as a leader and becomes, and with the help of the other people who were invested in it, now they all have this collective unity and like reasoning to push it forward because they invested, but it came to a point where it was just them being friends in the community and they met through there, and now it's worth nothing or the guy leaves, but you have the ability with blockchain to be able to take that IP, take that brand and continue pushing it forward only because you can confide in that global community that you've built. So that's an important component, I think. And for DAOs and stuff moving forward, just unified governance for pushing a brand forward.
Yeah, right? It's the first time in history we're seeing this kind of organization.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's powerful.
Yeah, I mean, with DAOs especially, it's kind of like taking that board of directors responsibility and just kind of giving it to everyone, right?
Yeah.
And then you have your voting power. You can delegate. If we were both in a DAO and I was like, I'm busy the next month, here, I'll delegate my tokens to him and he can vote for me because I trust him or whatever. It is pretty interesting. But on that same kind of note with like communities and building up that outreach of the similar-minded people and working with them. You've founded one project, two projects I know you've been involved with. What is that like from being the founder and trying to develop that community around an idea or a mission or a purpose?
Yeah, I feel like it's a lot. It's definitely a lot. Every founder here, please. But what really makes me happy about building is being able to share and connect with others in my spiritual practice. That's the reason why this is happening. And I think like I was always very private with what I would be doing. Like I would always show the physicality though. I would just show that I would be doing yoga and that, I'm an athlete, but I wouldn't really share more. And like my mindset, I would always share it, like, and my intellect, because that's cool. It's rewarded. You're rewarded by showing that. But as my spirit, I was a little shy. And then I didn't want to feel like judged about how I would work my spiritual practice. And I remember like in the pandemic when I was in New York, in Manhattan, in my apartment, and we were completely locked.
Yeah, New York was much different than Florida down here.
It was real. It was real, as in like we couldn't even open the window. I remember because it was like the air that comes from the hospital that's 50 meters will get us sick. So it was extremely apocalyptic.
Yeah.
And I was doing my practice one day at night, just meditating, breathing, moving my body. I really love like to move like how I'm feeling. So if I'm like kind of flow, right? Not really plan my workout, just kind of feel. And I remember I heard like screams from the hospital, which was really close by because the ambulances were outside and they, couldn't really get people in because the hospitals were actually full. And I just closed my eyes and I saw this kind of like person just like, I felt their suffering, like I felt their pain and I felt their fear very, very intense in my heart. And it hurt. It really hurt. And I started to cry so much. And I'm like, oh my goodness, like people are actually so afraid and so anxious. And that is the worst when you don't know what to do. And it's just such a strong feeling. And I didn't know what to do. So I'm like, what do I do? And I asked, like, what do I do? And I heard this, like, bruja en acción, which means, like, witch in action, right? And I'm like, what? Bruja en acción? Like, a witch in action? I'm like, what? And it's just this thought. And I'm like, I gave it a moment. I finished my practice, and I knew it right there. I was like, go to my computer. I went into my computer, and I'm like, okay, guys, I'm going to be sharing a Zoom yoga class to all my friends and family just for free. I'm going to be doing it every week. I'm like, I need to share. Like, I can't, And I started doing that. All the pandemic, I did free yoga and meditation and workshops to my friends and my family, whoever was available to connect in Zoom, from people all over the world. And it got me close to all these people. And then one night, I was scrolling through Instagram and I needed inspiration. I was like, my God, like we need to create something. And I remember Clubhouse was like popping back and like NFTs were just starting to like really take a stand. So I was hearing about it, but I needed art. I needed to feel like I connect. And I saw the art of Lucia Dami, who I've seen before. And I did a cover of a magazine. I was in Costa Rica as the brand ambassador for Perfil, the magazine in Costa Rica and Latin America, for female entrepreneurs. So I was producing that cover. And we did a photo shoot, beautiful, in this jungle in Costa Rica. And from those photos, I'm like, I would really love to like have Lucia help me and commission her to, get some like beautiful art on top. She brings like this gold like painter, and she like draws the unseen in women, and then she converts these photos in art pieces. So it's beautiful art. And so I commissioned her. I'm like, hey, would you help me with this images? And then we started working together. She helped me develop this logo, which is bruja, witch. By working together, we never met, but we started talking every day. And it became such a fun experience to work with her that like, I got bruja out. I started sharing more of my work, more of my practice. I was inside. No one was modeling. I was not modeling. Auditions were all like self-tapes. Like we just had to, so it was so disconnected. I'm like, okay, I was actually doing some modeling in the most bizarre ways through Zoom, but it was, that's another story. But, this is just like taking pictures. Like it was, I mean, the industry was really trying to adopt, but in reality, nothing much was happening, you know? So I thought that was such an important moment for me to go inside of myself and be like, okay, what is it that I need to do? And then from there, Lucia is the actual artist of Sacred Avatars. We spoke like a year later and we started working together. We started asking many questions. We took a long time to come with the art. And when I say a long time, like probably like 7 months to make decisions that sometimes are made in 2 minutes. But, you know, we both are healers. We both are in this realm of spirituality, and we both could like go through like a lot of wormholes in our brains in terms of like, why do we do that? One of the things that I love about the Sacred Avatars is that it's the first NFT or digital collectible that wears the meta skin of the universe. So that's super cool, because what it means is that there is no layer of skin color or tone, but it's the actual galaxy and universe. That's their skin tone. And we made that very purposeful, because we're like, how do we bring diversity and how do we connect everybody? So we're like, what if they're just inside? What if they're in the universe? Like they're in the metaverse already. Like, how would they be? How's our higher selves? Like, we probably don't have skin tones. Like, you know, we're just souls and energy, like forces just going through.
That's interesting. Like, would my spirit recognize someone else's spirit and be like, oh, you're Italian like I am? Or you're, you know, like, I don't think that's interesting.
Yeah,
that's awesome.
So we embarked that journey of creating art, because they're art collectibles, and that took us quite a while. Then the technology also took us quite a while, just make those decisions. Who are we working? Why are we doing this? And then the market, right? So there's like all of these components, right? When building, like, to me, the art is fundamental because it helps me observe. And we're doing this, we actually created elements inside of the art. So they're like tarot cards. It's exactly like that. And they're the first, right? So when you get your Sacred Avatar, they all have different elements, like a moon phase and a constellation. And they might mean something depending on the sacred reading, that the elements that you get. So it's messages from our higher selves. And it's really beautiful to be able to bring a community of individuals that feel aligned in that message. And there's many of them. Like if we look at astrology, is like one of the fastest growing industries in the world. Like especially after COVID, it picked up. And like it's like growing like crazy. And I'm sure you guys meet someone and they're like, but do you know your ascendant and your sun?
What
and
time were you born?
Right? Okay, you got a good one. That's how we speak. Yeah, that's our coding.
What if there was a PFP collection where you just put in all of your information? Here's my month, year, time of birth, you know, ancestral lineage, and then you put together this whole PFP of like signs and galaxies and like it's like matchmaking. Now it's like a dating app just for women who follow the astrological chemistries of things.
Yes, it's real.
I don't know. I believe where you were born, the time you were born, and like even who you were born around forms who you are as a person. Like it's very, very important. My dad happened to find and dated a girl for 13 years who had the same birthday as him, and it's interesting. It's like they're compatible, and like what are the odds that they have the same birthday, same year of birth? They were born on the same day.
What's their sun sign?
No.
Like the horoscope. The horoscope usually it's the sun, right? So where the sun.
September 15th. So you tell me.
Virgo. No. Yeah. Virgo. Right?
Virgo.
I'm a Virgo. I'm the 4th.
Oh, then yeah.
So that's.
Then it comes in, yeah.
What's wrong with Virgos? Is it good?
Nothing's wrong with Virgos.
He's a Virgo.
I will tolerate no Virgo slander here.
My son is in Gemini. So when I was born, my son was in Gemini. Should I say my moon and my ascendant?
I'm going to judge you hard. Yeah, if they don't align.
My moon is in Virgo and my ascendant is in Pisces. Yeah, give me that to Pisces, the high sensitivity. The highest sensitive. How about you?
I was born on April 18th.
What's your sun?
I'm an Aries.
Mm-hmm. And your moon?
I've heard fire or sun, or I've heard fire.
So like your moon was in a constellation as well. It was in another one. So if your sun is in Aries, your moon was somewhere else, and then your ascendant. But that's not the only data points. There's like all the planets, like Mercury, Mars, Neptune, like all of those were positioned in a specific place as well. So it's fun because it's just like parts of our personality traits that when we look at it in masses, like a bunch of data, we actually see so many correlations. So it's definitely picking up, and it also helps us connect with two elements that are the most real elements that I've known, which are the sun and the moon. Like we've seen ancient civilizations grow with the sun and the moon. They grow food with the moon. You know, most indigenous communities grow based on a new moon or a full moon. We understand that the moon actually shifts, you know, the water. So we can see how important the moon is for us, right? So what is our relationship and how does behavior change with the moon? For us as women, for instance, our cycles are connected to the moon. So we bleed. Most women bleed rather in the new moon or the full moon. It's almost around days separate from the new moon or the full moon. So you're starting a cycle with the moon it's exactly accurate to our bodies. So it's like, that probably means something.
See, but yeah, like time is a construct, and before there was like a sense of time and being tracked, right? They followed constellations, they followed the moon. I saw something, it's like a turtle's shell has the like 13 sections on it, and then like you guys have to look at this. It was so trippy. It was so trippy. About. They said a turtle's shell, its back was a calendar, and it actually adds up to 365 or 64 points because it's like little shapes like this, and it adds up to 300. It's so crazy once you look at it. Highly recommend.
That's incredible.
Yeah,
and I love turtles.
I'm always so fascinated by
They're
like
so
the moon and like how it affects tides, like as like a fisherman and like all of those. And like we're made up of 70% water.
You think of it
so
just
obviously
from facts and like analyzing like these little parts, like you said. If our body is the same percentage of water as the Earth is the same percentage of water, and the moon makes water move on the Earth, well, what is it doing to the water within us, within our cells, within?
We change with the tides.
We find these. I personally, when you look, like there's so many patterns that exist.
Oh man!
In a big scale, right in front of our faces, and then on like a cellular scale as well. So it's really, really fascinating watching that kind of stuff and paying attention to it.
My sister is really big into the cards, and she always does my readings. I wish I could record it just so I know when people ask me.
Should we get a card out? I got a deck here.
Get it out.
Yeah.
Let's do it.